It's time for SC250 Tuesday, bringing you information about Chesterfield County, the PD region, and South Carolina's role in the American Revolution. Our guest today is retired history teacher and current Chesterfield County probate judge, Mrs. Gail Ingram. We're talking about why it's important for everyone to embrace SC250 and learn about the role our forefathers played in America's independence, and why we should teach our children and younger family members our history. We now welcome Mrs. Ingram.
We are introducing our SC250 Tuesday series, and what better way to start than talking about history, and the foremost person for history in our region has to be retired history teacher, now our probate judge, Mrs. Gail Ingram. Welcome, Ms. Ingram.
Thank you very much. That's quite an intro, and I'm very humbled by that. Thank you.
Well, we have history coming up, and throughout your teaching career, you focused on history, everything including up to and world history. And we're just very pleased to have you here. And with the SC250 at America's 250th anniversary coming up, why is it important for everyone to embrace our 250th anniversary and learn about the role our forefathers played in America's independence?
Well, I think most people are more familiar with South Carolina's role in the American Civil War. So I think this initiative, South Carolina 250, is a pretty good opportunity to remind people about the huge part that South Carolina played in helping to win independence from Great Britain. Now, from what I've read, I know that this anniversary celebration promises to take a different approach, not just the hero worship of the founding fathers, not just concentrating on Lexington and Concord, get to Saratoga, Yorktown, and then, we're free. But it is just a good time to remind people that it was actually ordinary people who helped to produce that victory, and people from different walks of life. Charles Baxley, who died last year, he was the chairman of the South Carolina Revolution Sesquicentennial Commission, and he said that the commission is dedicated to telling the story of the American Revolution as it exists, the beauty and the warts and the terror of it all, and they are dedicated to the idea, which is a radical and new idea, of telling it from different points of view. And my favorite historian is Walter Edgar, and he's the preeminent historian for South Carolina. I like what he said. It's important to tell everyone's story. It's not just the people in the fancy knee breeches and the powdered wigs. So I do think that embracing this initiative is vital, because it does reveal how it's the local communities, how it's the everyday people together who worked for a common goal. It wasn't just these distant generals. We're looking at women, we're looking at farmers and blacksmiths, frontiersmen, and we're also looking at two groups who may have been ignored, and that would be the Native Americans and the black slaves. And this initiative does promise to uncover their unknown or unforgotten sacrifices, because they help to contribute to the victory. Perhaps a lot of people don't realize that there were tens of thousands of slaves who were involved in the American Revolution. Some of the slaves stayed with their owners, who rewarded them with freedom. Some of the slaves were used, on the part of the patriots as slaves and messengers. They weren't used as frontline troops, but they were in support roles as engineers or sailors. And then, of course, you did have some slaves who actually fought on the British side. So I think this initiative is important because it does shine light on groups that may not have been recognized, in textbooks or in past work. But again, it is interesting that we have this all-encompassing approach to the study of South Carolina's role in the American Revolution, because South Carolina did play that major role. It helped to turn a stalemated war into a victory against the British. And that's something that needs to be highlighted. It's like the American Revolution just didn't take place in Massachusetts or Virginia. You had a great deal of activities going on in South Carolina.
For our former Patrick residence book, there were more battles fought in South Carolina than any other colony, any other state.
And that's true because, again, the rugged interior of South Carolina became a stage for all kinds of engagements and skirmishes, and especially brutal partisan warfare that helped to break the British control of the South. That's one thing that people sometimes forget. In South Carolina during the Revolution, there was an actual civil war going on in South Carolina because you had some South Carolinians who were on the side of the British. They were called Loyalists or Tories. And then you had the individuals who were fighting for independence. So it was a civil war. I remember reading during the bicentennial celebration in South Carolina 50 years ago, there was a military historian who put out a pamphlet called The Partisan War, in which there were comparisons made between the war during the Revolution in South Carolina and the Vietnam War. And, some people perhaps didn't like that comparison since 1976 was not too long after the end of the Vietnam conflict. But in South Carolina, you had maybe 1/3 of the South Carolinians who supported the Patriot cause, maybe the other third on the side of the British. And then you had the other third who were neutral or shifting, maybe transactional, depending on what happened to them during their daily lives. So if their lives were interrupted by someone who did violence to them, depending on the side that committed the violent act, they would support the other side. And one thing to note, too, 1/3 of all the casualties in the Revolutionary War were in South Carolina. I came across one thing that I thought was interesting. Everybody knows about the Boston Tea Party, but 13 days before the Boston Tea Party, there was a tea party in Charleston. And rather than destroy the tea, the citizens in Charleston actually sold it and used the funds to support the cause of the revolution. So they didn't dump the tea in the harbor. They actually sold it. And that was the Charleston Tea Party. And I think a lot of people are familiar, too, with some of the names in the revolution in South Carolina, like Francis Marion. There was an old Disney movie where the actor Leslie Nielsen played the Swamp Fox. And there was a song, too, that went with it. But we also have people like Thomas Sumter, known as the Gamecock, and, of course, Andrew Pickens. And they're interesting because they're the ones that brought the guerrilla war to the British. They made the British fight them in the swamps. They pioneered all those hit-and-run tactics against those traditional British regulars who really didn't know what was happening to them, perhaps. But they were able to exhaust the British troops and pretty much help to get them out of South Carolina. And going back to my favorite historian, Dr. Walter Edgar, he said that the reason why Cornwallis surrendered to the Patriots or to George Washington in Virginia, Yorktown, is that he got the stuffing beat out of him in the Carolinas. So again, lots of interesting reasons why we should have a lot of attention paid to South Carolina and its role during the Revolutionary War.
And we really have right here in our own backyards. The history happened here. And that is just so amazing to think that our freedom for American independence such a big role was played right here where we're living today.
And sometimes we forget that, don't we, Jane?
Yes, we do. And this is probably the best reason why we want to teach our children and our younger family members about the American Revolution, because it wasn't just something that happened somewhere. It happened right here.
And there's so many well-preserved battle sites, around South Carolina. I mean, you could go to Sullivan's Island, and there was a big victory there of the Patriots in June of 1776. Colonel William Moultrie defended that island, Sullivan's Island, against the British Royal Navy. Their fort was built out of a bunch of spongy palmetto logs. And, that palmetto log wall absorbed all the British cannon fire and inspired the name of our state, the Palmetto State. And that same colonel, Colonel Moultrie, he was given the task of creating a flag for his troops, and he used the blue from the South Carolina militia uniforms, which were dyed with indigo. And the official state color of South Carolina is indigo. So lots of reasons to go back to the time of the Revolutionary War to see how so many things that we know about our state actually got started.
Well, what a history we have. Thank you for being with us. America 250th anniversary and the SC250 project. I think we have kicked it off in grand fashion with our history, with the best and most renowned local historian, Ms. Gail Ingram. Thank you for being with us. And you've been listening to our SC250 project here on WCRE Radio.
You've been listening to SC250 Tuesday, bringing you information about Chesterfield County, the PD region, and South Carolina's role in the American Revolution, and brought to you by the SC250 Commission.